So let's talk about the homework solution. So we had the fetch one record. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to move it up here after the get of to-dos because it kind of fits here, fetching all the records and then fetching one record. The code is actually almost the same, as you'll see. I'll just copy paste this. Actually, this whole thing too. And what happens here is all I need to change is really, I just need to fetch a single record instead of multiple records. So I'll say, where ID is, and then ID will come from args, right? I don't have to verify it or escape it because if the ID is messed up, I mean, it's the wrong one, then all that's going to happen is that I will not find the record. In which case, actually, here's a question. What do I do if I don't find the record? We'll get to that in a moment. So now let's just try this out. Let's see how that works. This is not the correct implementation yet, but it's a good starting point to discuss it. So we had, let's go here. So we had to-dos. Let's just make sure this still works. It doesn't. All right, so API line 88. Oh yeah, of course not. Right, you can't. Yeah, syntax error there. Let's try again. There we go. So here are my records, quite a few. And let's try pull one. So let's say number 3. So I'll do to-dos /3, that's by ID. And it kind of looks okay, but it's not really because it's an array with one item. Right? That's not the way this is supposed to work. It's like I have an extra wrapper around the actual data. So what I want is, I don't want to have an array of one item in it. I'd rather have, and by the way, if I have multiple, if I have no items, then I get an empty array. That's also kind of weird. So what I want is, I want, first of all, fetch just one record. So I wouldn't do query. I would do query first row. Right, because I'm fetching a single row only. So you see the extra wrapper just disappeared. Okay. All right, guys, today, because of the time, I will be doing things and I'll give you the code afterwards. I think that'll be better because we'll be short on time today. We still have to do the client, which we haven't even started on yet. And so we're a little bit behind to what the usual rhythm is, but that's okay. We'll manage. Right, so I'm fetching a single record this way, right? Doing query first row, right? Pulling the arguments from the ID from the URL. I'm okay with that. Now there's a couple of issues here. One is, what if I did not find the to-do, right? What if I did not, excuse me, the item rather? And it's not a list anymore, by the way. It's item, right? Because it's not a list of them, it's just a single one, right? So the question is now, what happens if I didn't find it? So let's see, if not item, then what I want to produce is actually a 404 error, right? And we did that before. This one will be almost the same. So I'm changing the status to 404. But the difference is I won't be, I will not be rendering a template anymore. I will, in fact, write JSON message 404 not found. It doesn't really matter what I write here. You see, if the code is 404, the client will know that there was an error. It really doesn't matter what I write here, because the client, the user that is using the client won't even see the message, generally speaking, right? And by the way, we should do the same thing over here. You see, this is the general not found handler. It should actually be exactly the same, right? So I'll change this to copy, because this old not found handler was actually trying to render a template, which is completely useless here because we don't actually have templates. We don't want them here. Okay, so I changed the not found handler as well. So the way this now works is, let's just try this. Let's make sure this still works. Yep. So if I do 3333, there we go. I get 404 not found, but it doesn't matter. You see the code over here, the right-hand side, status is 404. That's what the client program will be looking for. right? That's how the client knows whether the request succeeded or not. If it's 200 to 1 success, if it's 400, 500 failure, that's how it knows. Okay, all right, good. So let's do that. And then what? So that was the get, yes, that was the get, that's it for what we're doing right now. And then let's do the delete. Delete is gonna be really quite simple too. Now the thing is, let me think about it. In SQL, if we delete a record that doesn't exist, that's still okay. And in RESTful or in REST APIs, it is actually the same. If you request to delete a record that does not exist, it is actually okay. It is actually totally okay. So we'll do that as well. And we'll log it just because.
Gregory,
Yes, go ahead.
could you just post the code for this snippet? Because I'm getting a weird error and I think I have a typo, but I can't find it.
Sure, just hold on a sec.
Thank you.
All right, so let's look at the delete, right? So deleting a single record, the URL handler will be pretty much the same as for the get, right? And then, well, for delete. So what do we need to check? First of all, the response will be always, oh, I just missed one. Hold on, you see, I just realized I missed one here. See, the response for the not found handler also is JSON. Okay, let me show you what the problem is currently. Hold on a second. Let's save this. Just need to go back to, so I got the 333. But what if I did ABC? Look at this. You see, right? So it says page not found. That is fascinating. Hold on, something's not right. It should have used this. It should have used this. I think I'm missing a line. Hold on, this is interesting. I have a bug here. No surprises, right? This is one of the beauties of working in software. There's always more problems to solve, right? It's a good thing if you get paid by the hour, which is usually the case. I think I'm missing the apt-get container. See, I'm not seeing assignment to the container anywhere. You see, it doesn't say container equals anywhere. I'm accessing a variable that doesn't exist yet. I am creating it here as an array, but it doesn't actually exist. So I think I'm missing apt-get container. Yeah, I think that's where it is. Oops, we probably have the same issue in our previous code. There we go. You see how it works. Yep. Yeah, it's one of the downsides of having such a permissive language is that if you if you can create variables on the fly, it's never an error. You see here, the container didn't exist until now, right? Previously. And PHP would say, well, no problem. Seems like you want it to be an array, so I'll just create a container as an array and I'll put this item in there, right? It did not warn me. It did not say, oh, hold on, you're assigning to container a not found handler, but container doesn't exist. You never created. There was not even a warning, right? There was not even a warning. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Guys, if you want to add that too, you probably should. If you are trying to keep up with this, this is what I added just after the appconf. All right. Anyway, glad we found this. I have a feeling we may have had this issue with a previous group actually as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, that's probably where this came from. All right. Anyway, so I got to this ABC, right? 404 not found. Because you see, if I type ABC, I never find any URL handler to match it. You see, look at this. This one says this has to be numerical. So if I say ABC, there is no handler for to/ABC, right? You get that, right? If I do this, same thing, right? Right, for any URL that has no matching handler, I will get this 404 not found, which is exactly what I want. So I'm happy with that now. It's better. Let's see. So let's go back to the delete. Right. So delete needs to create, as always, needs to create a JSON response, and I still would love to find to change the content type globally for the entire PHP Slim instead of repeating this line for every handler. I would like to do that, but if you guys find a solution for it, that'd be nice. Let me know. I'm sure there is one. We did that in PHP Slim 2. I just haven't done it in PHP Slim 3. So next, delete ID, right? By ID. So we need to issue a delete query, right? So let's just do that. So we'll do DB delete, right? From table to dos where ID is ID, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. And I'll log it, you know, just because I think I should log it. So I'll say something like record to this deleted with ID. Yeah, something along those lines. Right. The code is 200, so I don't have to modify it. The only time I get something else is for put, right? Put needs, excuse me, post. Post needed to 1, right? But all the other ones are 200, so I don't have to adjust that. And I should return something. And what I will return, I could return something like just true or false or something like that, you know. I could actually check if the record was actually deleted. Now, it doesn't matter for whether it succeeds or not. It's still considered a success, but technically I could get this thing called affected rows, which will tell me how many rows were affected by my last query. So if a row was deleted, then affected rows will be 1. If not, then it's going to be 0, one of the two, right? So what I'm thinking is I'm just going to borrow some code here. What I could just do is I could fetch it. I could check if I get any affected rows, turn it into a Boolean value. So is the count not a 0, meaning what? If there was an affected row, I'm going to get a true. If there wasn't, I'm going to get a false, right? And I'll turn it into a JSON string and I'll send it back. Now, will the client care? I don't know, probably not actually, but it doesn't matter. I can send it anyway. So I'm sending back true or false, one of the two values, right? Either true or false. I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that. Any questions on this? I'll test it and I'll give you the code as well. So let's see. To test this one, we need our postman. So let's see, to dos. Let's make sure this one still works. So if I do a get, send, yeah, I got them all. And let's delete number 2. Okay, so if I do get on 2, that's the one I'm going to delete. So I'll do, well, delete, send, and true. Look at this. Okay, so that would mean that the record was actually deleted, that it existed before, and I actually deleted that. Now, if I repeat this request, look at this. If I send it again, now it says false. Why? It's not a failure. You still, status is still 200. See on the right-hand side there? Status is still 200. It still succeeded because I did not want to have this record. I don't have this record, right? So it's still okay. But it didn't really have to do anything. There was no actual action, right? Because the record was already deleted earlier. Okay. And if I do let's just do my get of them all. There you go. Record number 2 is gone. And then if I did this, then I get my 404 not found. By the way, for this one, the status is really 404. See? Okay. Any questions so far on the delete and fetching of single record?
And when deleting, which line do you send the status 200?
It's there by default. If I don't change it, it is 200.
Always delete or not?
Every request that you send to PHP or to the web server, unless you take a special action, the return code will be 200.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So now let's see what else we had. We're missing put or patch. We're missing those. Now these are a little complicated. We're gonna put them. Let's just do here, right? So I'll do them. We actually will implement both put and patch in one, just because we can. What's the difference? The difference is in put, we have to provide all the values except for ID, and in patch, we could provide just some of the values except for ID, right? Patch allows us just to change one or two columns or a few, right? And in put, we must provide the entire record. Which one will be used by the client? I don't know, but I can implement both, right? And the way to do that is actually, some of you may or may not have seen it. There's this thing called map. You can actually tell PHP Slim that you're gonna handle, and these I think have to be all capital letters, that you're gonna handle multiple types of requests here. So here we just had post or delete or get, right? But this one will react. This one will handle both put and patch, right? The URL will be similar, right? To-dos ID 0 through 9, one or more of those, right? Yeah, that should do it. And then, and the rest will be similar. Let's just grab this. Let's just grab this chunk. Okay, here, yeah, we're good. All right, so I'm handling here both put and patch, and they both require an ID, right? Because if I'm changing a record, I need to know the ID of the record I'm changing. The response, as always, will be the same. It has to be application JSON, right? And now, am I receiving information? Yes, I am, most definitely, right? I am receiving information from the client, right? So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the post. You see, it's the same code. Get body, the code, right? And I'll just change it to item. And then what? And then I should do a validation, which I don't have yet. I don't have a validation yet. And then let me think. I actually have to do a select. Here's why. I can only update a record that already exists. Now, let's make something clear. RESTful APIs allow us to create a record when you use put. Technically, it is possible to create an API when the client does a put. If the record does not exist, it gets created. Yes, it is possible. Okay, think about it this way. If you let's say you have passports, and your primary key is the ID of a passport, not an integer, but just an ID of a passport. And then you do a put, which includes all the data, the ID of the passport, first name, last name, the passport number, right? First name, last name, and other information, right? Well, you have all the info to actually do an insert, right? So if the record doesn't exist, you could actually issue, there is an SQL query called insert or update. There is such a thing, actually. Okay, so we've got micro. It's not a feature of MicroDB, it's actually a feature of SQL. There's insert update, there you go. This is a query which will either insert a record if it doesn't exist, or it will update it, one of the two. I don't terribly like to use it. Most of the time, this is not a good idea. There are some rare cases when this actually comes in handy, but it is possible. Now, in our case, we can do that. Why? Because what? Because we need to have an ID. First of all, the IDs are generated automatically at insert, right? So doing a put requires an ID. That's my design of the API. So the way I designed the API, put cannot create a record. That's my choice. I don't have to allow it to add a record. I could. RESTful API definition allows me to do so, but I'm not obliged to make it happen. Okay, so in my definition, in my implementation rather, of put, I will not allow it to create a record, right? Which means that the record has to exist already. I have to actually do a select to find out if the record exists, because if it doesn't, then it's a 404, right? You see this ID, I have to verify, does this actually exist? Yeah, okay. You could say, hold on, but you could just do, Gregor, you could just use affected rows, right? Because I could do an update and then check affected rows. Was the row affected, right? Technically, theoretically, it sounds like a good idea. Guys, we did it. Here's the problem. In SQL, if you update a record with the same data that's already there, so if I have a to do, buy milk tomorrow, not done, pending, right? And if you update it with buy milk tomorrow, pending, you actually issue an update, but because no data was changed, affected rows is 0, even though the record exists. Because no data was really changed, affected rows ends up being 0. So unfortunately, we can't use affected rows to tell us whether the update actually succeeded or not, right? So we have to do a select first. That's not a problem, really. We'll just do, let's just do this. Orig item, the original item, we'll just do db, query, what do we need? Query first row, yeah, query first row. And we're actually gonna do pretty much the same thing. Hang in there, ask for the get of 1. Let's just grab this. Okay, so I'm saying select all from to do where ID matches the ID, and that's I'm gonna call it my org original item, right? So if my original item wasn't found, right? So this is what record not found, right? Then I need to issue 404. Meaning what? You're trying to update a record that doesn't exist, right? Can't happen. Yeah, that should do it. Okay. Otherwise, I am ready to do an update, right? So I'll say db update to-dos, and I'll say item. Now, guys, I got 2 items here. Don't get confused. The item came from JSON. That's what was sent from the client. And the original item is the one I fetched from the database. Just be careful here. Okay, 2 different items, right? This is the one that came from the database. I don't care about it anymore. I just wanted to verify that it exists, right? And here is the item that that came from the client, guys. So in this case, I don't care about this org item anymore, but maybe I would. For example, if I want to verify, you guys remember our auctions, right? You guys remember auctions, right? We did that. I know it was like, feels like a long time ago, but we did that. So in auctions, you actually had to verify when you're doing an update, you had to verify that the new price of the bid, that the new bid is higher than the previous one. So if this was an implementation of a put in auctions, you'd have to verify that the original item had a price lower than the one that came with the query. Yeah, just saying. All right, forward. So then we have the DB update. Yeah, let's do that one. So it's important to understand what the parameters are, right, for the update. So the first one is the name of the table, and the second one is an associative array. Okay, let's go back to the documentation. So we got the update. Insert update, replace update. There you go. This one is an associative array of key value pairs where the keys are the names of columns, right? And the values are the values you're inserting. Okay, and then you have the where clause, of course. Okay, so in this case, I can actually give it the item because what the item should contain key value pairs, which will modify the record. So I can actually just pass it directly, right? And then I have to say where ID is, well, you guys know the same thing. Args of ID, right? Because I'm updating the record that was passed in the URL. Okay, and then what? I don't actually have anything to return, to send back. I'm returning code 200 because it succeeded, obviously, right? But I know from experience that JavaScript clients, which is what we're going to take care of today, we're going to start implementing a client in JavaScript today. They don't like it when you return an empty string. They just don't. So I will just return true. I will just, you see, that's what I'm doing here. I will just return true back to the client always, right? When the update happens, just because I need to return something. Okay. And that's pretty much it. That's the implementation of the put, at least for the current moment. Okay, any questions on this so far? I'll take those. I should test it actually, right? Okay, let's test it. Oh yeah, I'm gonna break it. I'm so gonna break it. Okay, so let's try this. So to-dos. I'm gonna go with number 4. I'm gonna copy this. So I will be, let's just fetch number 4. Yeah. So my number 4, I'm gonna copy this. And now let's do a put, right? So when I'm doing a put, I'll go to the body and I'll say, I will update a few things. So I'll say ID, I am not sending the ID, I'm not supposed to, but I'm gonna say, take a walk again, and I'll put it to tomorrow, let's say, and pending. Okay, so I changed a few things, right? I added, take a walk again, I changed the date. Okay, send, let's see what happens. Oof, who knows? Okay, so actually it worked. Right, it says true. All right, did it really work? Well, let's take a look at the data we have. If I pull all the to-dos, there we go. It seems to have worked. I got take a walk again, and the date is tomorrow. So I think it worked. Right. Okay, well, that was the easy part. Now let's break it. How can we break it? What if I provide a name of a field that doesn't exist? How about this? All right, let's see what happens. Ah, see that? Something went terribly wrong. And actually, here's the thing. This is what I don't like about it. Look at the code. What's the code? 500. What does it mean, 500? Who's at fault?
Server.
Right. But who's really at fault?
Programmer.
Yeah, well, not the programmer, the client. The programmer is always at fault. Yes, that's true too. That is so true. But in this case, it's the client's fault, right? Because the client sent something here that they shouldn't, right? And what happened is that I accepted it. You're right, it's my fault, right? I accepted it because I don't have validation here. So I accepted it, and I run the update, and update failed. That's what happened, right? So I ended up, having a database error, right? Which is actually, by the way, here. Okay. So actually, we should just say, yeah, this should just say 500 internal error, really. Yeah. Okay, let me just check. This is okay. Yeah, this is okay. We're logging it, and then we're sending a response. There's one thing missing here, by the way, since we're talking about it. I need to change the content type. Now, I don't have the luxury of PHP Slim in here. We know that already. So I have to manually do that. I'll just fix it because the issue is, let me just explain what the issue is. This is a small issue, is that and they don't want to show me that. Come on. There you go. You see, it claims that the content, so the server says that this is HTML. It is not. It is actually supposed to be really JSON, right? Because I'm dealing with an API here. So there's a couple of things here I'm going to fix. One is I need to do JSON encode on this. That's first, right? And the second one is I did change the response code, but I also should change the content type. See this thing? That needs to be the content type needs to be application JSON. But because I don't have the luxury of PHP Slim here, right? I need to put a header into the response. So they actually probably have a, yeah, I need to actually use this. This is pure PHP. So we're kind of mixing here. So this has to be more or less pure PHP. Yeah. So header is, I'm just going to copy it from here. It's a little bit different. It doesn't take 2 parameters. It takes 1. And it looks like this. There you go. So now if let's just make it fail again. Right, see, it was text HTML. I'll do it again, send. Okay, so first of all, yeah, the message is nicer. It's an actual JSON string, right, which is good. And if I look at the headers, it actually says it's a JSON. Okay, so I fixed that up as well. Yeah. Okay. Better. Let's continue. So the next thing really we're missing, the next big thing we're missing is validation. Right, validating the to-do, and this one is kind of tricky. Okay, so I will actually, let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're doing okay. I will add a function here for validation. Let's put it, let's say somewhere here. So I'll say function validate to-do. And I will, because this one is for to-do specifically, so I'll call the parameter to-do. And I also want to know if I'm doing it, because when will I have to validate it? There's actually a few cases. When do I need to validate? When I'm receiving data from the client. Where does it happen? In get? Nope. No, I'm not receiving any data. Post? Yes. So when I'm doing post, I need to validate that whatever I got from the client side actually looks like a valid to-do, meaning what? It has all the fields, and the fields have some requirements about them, right? And also that it does not have any additional fields, right? So for example, I have the priority. Can't happen. So I have to verify that this to-do, as I'm receiving it, has all the fields that are required and only those fields. Except for ID, right? We're not, this doesn't send ID. Okay, next one, we got put and patch. Am I validating things? I need to. So I got actually 3 cases, right? I got post, put, and patch. Now, post and put are pretty much identical because both post and put require that I have provided all the fields. In patch, I'm allowed to provide only some of them. But in put and post, I must provide all the fields except for ID. So I actually have 2 cases, 2 possible cases there, right? One is all the fields are required if it's put or post, or case number 2, some of the fields are required. I mean, at least one, I would say, right? When I'm doing a patch. In both cases, I cannot have fields that don't exist in database. Okay, delete, do I need validation? No, you just delete it, you're done. Right, so you got 3 cases. So actually 2 cases for three uses. So I'll add a second parameter. I'm going to call it for patch. I'm going to set it for false because the special case will be if I'm doing a patch, then I want to allow a record the data with only some of the fields. Okay, so here's how I'll do it. I will say that this function will return true if everything is okay. And if it's not, it will return a string describing the problem. This is something that you couldn't really do in Java. I mean, in Java, you probably would do an exception anyway, right? But in PHP, there is no problem returning a Boolean sometimes and returning a string sometimes. Not an issue, right? That's just part of the language. You return whatever you want, just like in JavaScript. Okay, first thing is I'm not certain if this is actually necessary, but my notes, I actually have it. So I'll check if the to-do is a null. If it is, then I'll just say invalid the JSON data provided. I think this may happen. I think this may happen if I think it may. You see, if I'm doing JSON decode and what I received is not JSON. So think about it this way. Let's say here, let's just do this. I'm going to remove the urgency and I'll do, let's do a put. Yeah, sure. What if I do this? This is not a valid JSON at this point, right? See all those commas, right? I send it. See, now again, I'm getting internal server error. See what I mean? Right? Why? Actually, good question. It's a good question. I probably should look into my logs. Badly formatted SQL. Or something like that. Yeah, I probably got a null there. So what really happens is, let me just explain what really happens. What really happens is that we are getting a null here in line 97. Why? Because JSON decode, let's actually look at the documentation here. It return mixed. The value null is returned if the JSON cannot be decoded. See this? So JSON decode returns null if what was sent isn't proper JSON, right? So I could add an if over here every time I'm doing decode, or I could just, make it part of my validation, which it should be, right? Meaning what? Probably JSON decode failed due to JSON syntax errors, right? Whatever was sent wasn't valid JSON. Okay, so we'll do that one. Then this is the most tricky part, I think, which is validating the fields. And this is something that I've went over and over again. I'm just gonna grab the code because we've been perfecting this chunk with previous groups several times until it became something, I would say, how would I describe it? Concise and clear. Well, easy to understand? No, I didn't say that, but it's clear. All right, so here's what I'm doing. I got a list here of fields that I expect. So I expect to see task, due date, and is done. These are the three fields I'm expecting, right? And then I need to do two checks. Check number one, that there are no other fields provided, right? So I get my my JSON decoded, right? And no other fields are in it. So for example, previously I had the priority, it shouldn't be there. The way I do that is this is what is a little fancy here. There is a couple of array functions that are coming in very handy. Two of them actually, array keys. This returns an array, which is the keys of the associative array to do here, which is what? The names of columns that were sent from the client, right? So if the client says, let's just fix it up a little. If the client says, right, this, then the keys would be urgency, task, due date, and is done, right? So this one gets the names of fields. And then we do an array diff. This is a very nice function. We're saying, hey, what's the difference between the array? Which means what? What are the things? Now this one has a very specific definition, okay? What are the things that exist in, that exist in the first array, but don't exist in the second? It actually, the order matters. So array diff tells us what are the items that exist in the first array, but don't exist in the second. Now, if I get the correct list of fields, those two should be the same, right? Because the expected fields and the ones I receive should be the same. Meaning what? The array diff should return empty array. Meaning what? There is no difference, right? Meaning what? I should be seeing the same fields in the first as I'm seeing in the second. There should be no difference. If there is a difference, means that there is an additional field or fields that shouldn't be there. So here's what I'm doing. I'm saying, okay, if there is a difference, meaning what? There are some additional fields that shouldn't be there. I'll return a message saying invalid fields in to do, and I will. This is like concatenate essentially items. We'll test it in a moment. I'll show you how that works, right? But I'm going to return a message saying essentially what are the fields that shouldn't be there. Okay. Now, if I pass this stage, then there is another check. Ignore this for now. There's another check here, is the reverse. Are any fields missing? You see, the only difference between the two is the order. See, expected fields here comes first. So now I'm saying, are any fields missing? Now, this one only applies to post or put, right? Because we said that post and put require all the fields, but patch does not, right? So that's why there is an if here. If I'm not doing a patch, which means what? I'm doing a put or a post, then run this check. But if I'm doing a patch, then ignore it, right? Because in a patch, I don't have to have all the fields. Okay, let's see how that works. And yeah, and we said if everything is okay, we'll return true, right? If everything is fine. So let's plug it in. So we'll do, let's plug in the validation. So we're doing post. Just a moment. Found it. All right, let's do a post first. So in post, before I do insert, I need to check, did the validation return anything else but true? Right, so did I get anything else but true over here? And what I'm doing here, so there's a few things here. First of all, I'm running the validate to do of item, right? Which will return a result. I'm writing that to a variable. Guys, this is the same. Okay, so if this gets confusing, let me just rewrite it for you, just for a moment. It is the same as if I did this. Is that better? Right? Run validate to do, assign to the result, check if the result is not true. Right? That's what I'm doing. And I'm just going to bring back the original here. There you go. It is the same thing exactly. Okay, so I'm checking. Is the to do okay? If it is not okay, then I will respond with status 400, right? Previously, what would have happened is that my 91 line would break, the code would break here, and it would issue a 500 error, which is not real, really, because it's not really 500, it's a 400 problem, right? So I will create response with status 400, write a message that includes the result, which is what? Explanation of what went wrong. Okay, and then I will return that as a response. There you go. So let's test it. I'm going to do a post and I'll try and break it. So I'll do a post to to-dos, and this one should break. Why? The urgency shouldn't be there, right? Let's do a send, and there you go. Invalid fields in to-do, urgency. Okay, and if I add more, it will actually tell me what the invalid fields are. It's kind of neat. Okay. And also if fields are missing. So if I delete a field that should be there, it actually says invalid JSON data provided. So in this case, I don't actually, hold on, this one didn't parse. I take it back. Look, I actually have a parsing issue here. I have a comma here that shouldn't be there. So send again. There you go. It says missing fields. Is done is missing. See how nice that is? Again, it took us a few iterations with previous groups to figure out this code, but I think it's pretty cool. So we've got validation for the post is done. Yeah, any questions on this? Okay, so how do I plug it into others? Well, we'll do that in a moment. Let's finish the validation. Now, the validation needs to also verify the actual values. So now that we know that the parsing went okay, that the fields are okay, we probably have some requirements about the values, right? And those will vary. So for example, in my implementation of the database, none of those values can be null. Let me show what I mean. So for example, if I say task, if I write null here, this is actually valid JSON. The field is there, right? If I do send, see, I'm still getting internal error. You see that problem? It's not 500 problem. It's not a server's problem. The client messed up. Look, they gave me a null, right? So what I should do, I should detect it and I should give a 400 error instead. So here's what we did with the previous group. We said, well, how about we verify that all the fields are not null. Now, that depends a little bit on your database table, right? Maybe in your database table, there will be some fields that are nullable, and it's okay to give it a null. That's fine. But in this case, it isn't, right? In this case, we require all the fields not to be null. So as I'm saying, this may vary. All right, next one, the task. The task, we need to check the length of the task. It cannot be empty. It cannot be longer than 100 characters, right? Because in the database, I can double check that, but I'm quite certain we did 100 characters there. There you go. Task is varchar 100, right? So it has to be, it cannot be empty. So between 1 characters and 100, there has to be something in there. If it isn't, that's a problem, right? Next one, due date. So due date, I would validate that it needs to be, again, be between 20th or 21st century, more or less, somewhere there, right? So I'll do validation on this one as well. We haven't quite played with dates in PHP yet. So here's an example, right? I take the due date, I reformat it into year, month, day, and then I can verify if it actually is within the ranges that I want. Okay, so I'm turning that into a Unix time, just like we did. I think we did the same thing in Java and C#, right? So I'm parsing it, I'm turning that into Unix time, and I'm verifying. These are integer values, right? I mean, I'm checking it whether it's within the range of 1900 to 2100. Okay, so that's that. And the last one is done. You see, is done has a very strict requirement. It has to be either pending, or if I say is done, maybe send. Oopsie, that is wrong. Okay, so you see the database accepted it. This is wrong too. See, I got a 201 created, and it went in with value is done set to maybe. I think what happened, probably we got the default instead, which is going to be pending. Oh, even worse. Look at that. We get empty is done. Okay, I really don't like it. Hold on, we didn't make it nullable. What happened? Oh, that is just wrong. So enums, apparently in MySQL, they allow us an empty value. That's terrible. See, even though it's not nullable, it allowed us an empty value. Terrible. See, this is wrong. This will mess up our program later. So I'll say whatever, done, right? Okay, so I cannot allow it. It has to be one of the two values of the enum, which is either pending or done. And here is a chunk of code that will do it for us. Okay.
Sorry. So how would you check if one of the field could be nullable and the rest is nullable in the previous validation?
Yeah,
When we did-
good. Yeah, no problem. So what I would do is I would, instead of doing doing this over here, I would only do, so I would add another if. I would add something like, let's just see, nullable fields, right? And I would have, let's say that the due date could be null, right? I don't have many here, but let's just say due date, right? Or something, right? So I would say that just hold on a second. I'm just gonna check. Let's just record this chunk. So I just added this little thing here, which is if I have any nullable fields, right? Then I will skip them when I'm doing the validation for being a null. Right, I'll skip that. All right, forward. So now I need to plug it in. I already plugged it in to post the validation, and I need to plug it into put and patch. There's a slight difference there for put and patch. because I need to provide the second parameter. I need to say if I am actually calling a put or a patch. So it's almost the same. It's almost the same, but not quite. I have to ask which method am I in? Am I, because I need to know, right? See, in here to do validation, I need to be able to tell, am I in a put or am I in a patch? So I can actually do request get method, tell me which method am I in? Am I doing a put? Am I doing a patch? By the way, those are always all capital letters. Somehow that's just the way it is. It's always all capital, the put, patch, post, all of them. Okay, so just be aware. And then I'll call, it's pretty much the same code except the second parameter. The second parameter will be true if it's a patch. Why do I do that? Because if it's a patch, then my validation needs to skip this part, right? If I'm doing a patch, then I'm allowing only that I may have only some fields provided, right? I don't require all of them to be provided if I'm doing a patch. So that's why the second parameter needs to be, well, in this case, needs to be true for a patch and false otherwise. Okay, the rest is the same. I'm checking, did I get anything else but the true value? And then if I got something else, means I got an error, set the status to 400, right? And send back JSON describing the problem, and that's it. So there you have it. That's a complete solution for that part. We still will be back here once we add authentication, if we have the time to do so. I hope so. But that should pretty much handle it. Yeah, for the most part, that should be all that we need. Any questions on this? Any questions on this? Not hearing any. I'm just going to add a little line here just so we have some sort of an index, and I think we're okay.